Thank you, Jan Pronk, academician, but I've been for a longer period in my life a politician. We have a short period. We all decided to highlight one specific aspect. I will concentrate on the role of the United Nations in governance of sustainability issues. Not only ecological sustainability, because it's related to socio-economic and political sustainability. The UN, it's the embodiment of internationally agreed values. They have been embodied in international law, in the institutions based upon international law, with their own rules, procedures, and instruments. Its establishment in the 40s of the previous century was a breakthrough in the history of international civilization. It was meant, at the time, to address the deficit of world stability, the deficit of world sustainability. And it has indeed functioned rather well up to a point. However, presently it fails in a number of respects. And I mention the following. It does not reflect, at the moment, the new power configurations in the world. 60 years later, they are completely different from the 1940s. Secondly, there's a widening gap between the values of the system and the policy practice in the world. It's increasing. Thirdly, the system is no longer able to address the presently most important challenges with regard to stability and sustainability. They're different from the 1940s. Fourthly, confidence in the system amongst people, but also amongst many governments, has been eroded gradually, more and more. And fifthly, it is too much still an intergovernmental, international organization, failing to reflect both the aspirations of people in many countries and to address transnational power configurations. So the UN system is becoming less and less relevant to deal with the deficit of stability and sustainability. And the administration within the UN system is, in my view, insufficiently aware of this. And at the same time, new power centers, coalitions of a certain goodwill, but what is goodwill? Take over. And this, as a matter of fact, is resulting in a further marginalization of the system. They are efficient, but they are not based on internationally, globally agreed values. They are becoming important in peacekeeping, NATO. They are becoming important in climate change, all these coalitions of goodwill. They are becoming important in poverty eradication, social, outside the system, just on the basis of regional views. In my view, we need to make use of the present world economic crisis related to other crises, to rethink the necessity of reforming the system in order to strengthen the system, so that we have world decision-making on the basis of globally agreed values. A number of proposals, not all of them new, but together they are a reform program. Firstly, well known, reform of the Security Council. More permanent members, less use of the veto, less Europe, more Latin America, India, Arab, Muslim countries. Secondly, establish a second chamber, a second window in the Security Council, dealing not with political insecurity, peace, but with social, economic and environmental insecurity. Same composition as the reformed Security Council, same countries, same rules, same procedures. Membership, not ministers of foreign affairs of the same countries, but if necessary, ministers of finance, ministers of agriculture, minister of environment, etc. Same authority at the highest level. Thirdly, weed out in the UN system all those bodies which are becoming less and less relevant dealing with social, economic and environmental questions. Second committee, third committee of the General Assembly, ECOSOC, Trade and Development Board, merge them into one overall global committee of the United Nations General Assembly, able to deal with all the interrelated social, economic and ecological issues at the same time in their mutual relationship, rather than shifting each time a new subject to another meeting, because it's not necessary to discuss it over here, it's not our mandate. Weeding out, merge. Fourthly, establish more panels of scientists, like the International Panel for Climate Change, representing world scientific knowledge of the day, representing all countries and all disciplines with regard to other insecurity and lack of sustainability questions, such as there are, for instance, biodiversity, such as there are, for instance, environmental pollution of a different character, food security. I mean, insecurity and insustainability questions, and this is not an exhaustive list, challenges for the future generation, which cannot speak, which doesn't have a vote in present decision making. Fifthly, establish, in order to increase the confidence of people all around the world in the UN system, some vehicles like a People's Forum and the possibility for minority groups within countries to address the system right away, not through their own very often oppressive government. So the right to appeal on the global system and the obligation, the duty of the global system to address the appeal in order to decrease the gap between we, the peoples, and the system. Sixthly, give the Secretary General of the United Nations and his staff the authority to decide on the agenda, so that governments cannot say we are not going to discuss it, these sustainability issues, because we want to discuss it somewhere. To decide that governments have to discuss it in the various fora. The Secretary General, of course, cannot decide what the outcome of the talks and the negotiations will be, but as soon as there are outcomes and results, it's the authority of the Secretary General and his staff to implement them, rather than having all these non-implementation examples of agreed resolutions. Authority to take the decisions on the agenda and the authority to implement the outcome of talks. With the capacity, of course, to do so, which means we have to review the possibilities of the United Nations to raise its own resources. There are numerous examples with regard to proposals, and also to have a staff beyond just a civilian staff. Finally, seventh, related to this, a reform of the Bretton Woods system. The authority being discussed at the moment, important. The Bretton Woods system, in particular also the International Monetary Fund, to oversee governments, also of countries which are not in